Buff Orpington. Standard height, large. Brown body, golden brown plumage, clean legs and feet. Small, red single comb, red earlobes, large light brown eggs, frequent layer, very docile, will often go broody. Excellent for raising chicks from fertile eggs. Blackbird Farm, June 25th, 2014. Mariposa Garcia Gonzalez, Land of the Dead. Querida Abuelita, I saw a flyer at the library yesterday for the 4-H poultry program. It had a picture of a funny-looking chicken on it with feathery pom-pom things on its head. I didn't know what 4-H was, but I looked it up, and it's for kids to learn about farm things. And I want to learn about poultry, or at least chickens. It said it meets on the last Wednesday of the month, which is today, and it's for ages 10 to 14, which is me, and maybe also that boy named Chris that I met, the one whose rooster got killed. Maybe even the girl with the llama book that I haven't really met yet. And it's free. And Abuelita, none of my old friends write me, so I asked if I could go. When Dad dropped me off at the library, I was a little nervous. I don't really like meeting new people. And when I have to talk to a group, it's like my throat is strangling on the inside, and I can't breathe. But I don't like not knowing anyone either. So I thought about my chickens, and I went inside and asked Miss O'Malley where the meeting room was. She gave me kind of a funny look when she told me. The kind of look that makes my stomach hurt. But I told myself that if you could be brave when you first came to LA, I could be brave here. When I got to the meeting room, there were already a bunch of kids inside, and they all looked like they knew each other, and almost none of them were brown. But I figured that's how it would be here. I saw the girl with the llama book, though, and she smiled at me again. So I took a deep breath, and I got ready to answer all kinds of questions as soon as I went in. Who I was when I came here, that I spoke English just fine, that Great Uncle Jim was really my great uncle, even though I don't look like him, that yes, I have some chickens, but not too much about chickens. And then I heard a voice. I don't think I could have moved even if I wanted to. I just looked inside, and there, at the head of the room, writing stuff on the board, was Miss Grigson. She turned her head, and I ducked back out the doorway. I left so fast I was almost running, all the way back down the hall to the main part of the library. I know she probably wouldn't have chased me, but I sure didn't want her to see me there. I went and read about chickens in the green chair in the corner of the library. Miss O'Malley saw me, though. I know because she brought over the local newspaper and asked if I'd seen the article about Redwood Farm Supply. So I read it. Only it wasn't about Redwood Farm Supply. It was about Miss Grigson saying she's always wanted to be the owner of Redwood Farm Supply, and now she's working to reopen it, making Gravenstein a destination spot for poultry lovers everywhere. What is she talking about, Abuelita? Agnes owns Redwood Farm Supply. She wouldn't sell it to Miss Grigson, even if she did sell that hawk chicken to her. At least, I hope she wouldn't. I'm worried, Abuelita. I know Miss Grigson knows a lot more about chickens than I do. I know she wants my chickens, too. I read about chickens until it was time for Dad to come pick me up. Then I went and met him outside before the kids or Miss Grigson could come out of the meeting room. When he asked me how it was, I said it was fine. Dad has enough to worry about, but I'm not going back to 4-H. Te extraño mucho, which means I miss you a lot. Sofecita. And here is an entry that looks like it's clipped from the newspaper. Gravenstein Independent Journal, June 24th, 2014. New Life for Redwood Farm Supply by Joy Ocampo. Unusual chickens have been my life's work ever since I first worked for Redwood Farm Supply, said Sue Grigson, who had begun the process to try and buy Redwood Farm Supply and bring the company back to life, putting Gravenstein once again on the poultry map. Continued on page 10, but it isn't actually. Blackbird Farm, June 26th, 2014. Mr. James Brown, wherever you are now. Dear Great Uncle Jim, I think your chickens are doing okay now. I bet you miss them a lot. I give them new food and water every single morning, even though I need to use lots of your jars to make sure all the chickens have plenty. There's a lot of poop, too, but that's no big deal. I just clean it up and put some new straw in. I wish I had another block of straw for when the one in the barn runs out, but I'll think of something. Every morning I check the nest boxes for eggs. Usually there aren't any, and that's kind of disappointing. But this morning there were 2 eggs in one nest box, one glass and one light brown. I was so excited. I really wish I could show someone, but at least I can tell you about it. Here's a picture of the eggs in the nest box, just for you. I hid them in the fridge in one of your old plastic containers. It was for margarine originally, and you can't see inside unless you take the lid off. I don't think anyone will look in there. And I read to them every afternoon. I know they probably don't understand, but my cousin Lupe wants to be a teacher, and she says you're supposed to read to babies, and they don't understand. So I figured it can't hurt. I haven't seen Miss Grigson lately. Maybe she gave up bothering us? I was pretty scared of Buffy until I got Agnes's letter. Now I know it's only her chicks that can turn things to stone. But still, I don't have a chicken that can turn stone things back to life, and Agnes didn't say it wears off. I was pretty surprised you had her at all. But then I thought maybe it's like zoos. I mean, you need someone responsible to make sure we still have tigers. You wouldn't want them to go extinct. I wish Agnes would tell me more about Buffy. Agnes seems kind of disorganized to be running a chicken business. She has lots of problems with her typewriter, too. You'd think she'd just write things out by hand. But maybe no one can read her handwriting, like with my grandmother. When I got Buffy, I got her from a boy who lived near here called Chris, who says he knew you. It made me feel kind of funny. Not only really funny, I guess, but sad, and maybe a little mad, to think about how he knew you better than I did. Anyway, he came over yesterday. He brought my crate back and I gave him his. Good thing I'd already cleaned it out. My dad came to find me while I was out making sure Buffy was getting along okay with the other chickens, and he brought Chris back with him. I know, I worry about my dad too sometimes. He's awful trusting. You'd think he'd never heard of chicken thieves. Anyway, Chris's eyes went all big and round when he saw Henrietta and the others. But they all had plenty of food and water, so I hoped they would just keep scratching the dust like regular chickens. I figured he probably wanted to make sure his chicken was okay, even though really she was your chicken and therefore now my chicken. I remember what it felt like when I thought I'd lose Henrietta and I'd only just met her. So I said hi and tried not to be suspicious or mad. And after Dad went off to the vineyards, we sat and talked about chickens for a while. Chris told me about poultry shows, where you bring your chickens for everyone to see and talk about them in front of everybody, and all kinds of chickens that folks on farms around here have. There's a kind called a silkie, a little bantam chicken that only has fluff, no feathers. And Chris says they probably can't really even see very well because they're covered in fluff, so they look sort of like a Muppet instead of a chicken. Like a big lumpy chick, I guess? And you have to keep them inside all winter or they get wet and cold, even in California, on account of them not having proper feathers. I told Chris I didn't have to worry about that sort of thing, having a whole empty barn and all, and he looked pretty jealous to hear about that. He has a barn too, but it's full of sheep in winter, which aren't nearly as interesting as chickens. But I guess you probably know all about silkies already, raising unusual chickens and all. Chris said you even used to take some of your chickens to the poultry show. I wanted to ask if he'd ever seen any of them do anything unusual, or why nobody noticed, but I'm not sure how well he knows Miss Grigson. I decided I'd better get to know him first. I kind of want to take my chickens to a show, until I found out you have to talk in front of everybody, and that sometimes it costs money to show them. Now I just want to go and see other people's chickens. Anyway, it turns out that Chris likes to draw. He drew a picture of my hen house on the stumps, only it wasn't really realistic because he drew it walking through the woods like the stumps were feet. And, well, I mean, that's impossible. It made me laugh, though. So he drew another, with Henrietta leaning out the front door like a pilot and Buffy clinging to the roof. We've decided to make a comic book, and I'm going to do the writing. Here's a copy of the first part for you. See what I mean? He's pretty good. I didn't tell him anything more about the chickens, though. Don't worry, I don't think he'd tell. But I know I have to keep them safe. Love, Sophie. P.S. Chris showed me how to wind up the rope swing that my dad made and get on it and let it spin around and around until you're so dizzy you feel like you might stop and throw up and have to lie down until everything stops moving. It was great. P.P.S. since you left us so much rope, I'm going to see if my dad will make another swing in the other tree for when I have friends over. PPPS. Chris says you can grow sunflowers from sunflower seeds, and then you can save the seeds from the sunflowers for your chicken. So if you plant one seed, you can harvest a whole bunch. I'm going to plant some right away. I bet that's how you got so many. PPPPS. When I told Gregory I got your chicken from Chris, he just nodded and said good and asked if I had any mail today. Blackbird Farm, June 26th, 2014. Agnes, Redwood Farm Supply, Gravenstein, California, 95472. Dear Agnes, when I went to the feed store today, after I took my library books back, Jane, who works there, asked if by any chance I'd found any small glass eggs around Great Uncle Jim's farm. She says he used to sell them to the feed store to fool people's chickens into laying. I guess he told her once that he had a lot left over from a project a long time ago. Well, I don't know about you, but that sounds exactly like Henrietta's eggs to me. Would it be okay if I sold them to the feed store, as long as I didn't say where they were from? Great Uncle Jim has so much junk around that no one would know but me, really. No one could make them hatch if I refrigerated them for 3 days first, could they? I've collected a few, and I found some more in one of Great Uncle Jim's blue jars in the back of the cupboard under the sink. I didn't know for sure if he'd put them in the fridge, so I put them in there just to be sure. Jane said they'd pay me $1 each. And with 4 chickens now, that food is disappearing a lot faster than it used to. Jane gave me a flyer for the town poultry show, too. It's less than a week away. She said it was too late to enter chickens into the show, but that I should come anyway so I'd know what to expect at the next one. Jane's nice. I didn't tell her it wouldn't be a good idea to bring my chickens to the show. She said something funny, though, so I thought I'd ask you about it. When I asked her if Redwood Farm Supply would be there, she told me they'd gone out of business years ago. Well, I knew that wasn't true, but I wondered if maybe you only secretly sell chickens now? Because of Miss Grigson and the typewriter and all? So I kept my mouth shut. I figured you'd appreciate that. I think I might go to the show even if I can't bring any chickens. I've never been to a poultry show before. I wonder if Chris will be there. I guess he probably already knows everyone, and all their chickens too. Still your friend, Sophie. P.S. Did you see the article about Miss Grigson wanting Redwood Farm Supply? What was that all about? You wouldn't sell it to her, would you? P.P.S. Don't let me know right away if I can sell Henrietta's eggs. Blackbird Farm, June 28th, 2014. Agnes, Redwood Farm Supply, Gravenstein, California, 95472. Dear Agnes, I forgot to tell you before, but I wanted you to know that I've been putting every single egg in the fridge every day, especially now that I know how important it is. For a while, I didn't know exactly whose was whose, since the chickens all lay in the same nest box and they're kind of sneaky about it. But I think I know now. The little glass eggs are Henrietta's. The regular-sized light brown eggs that are kind of pointy are chameleons. The little light brown eggs that aren't there very often are roadrunners. I do hope she's not laying them somewhere else while she's running around, but I've looked and haven't found any. And I don't think Buffy has laid any yet. I have a list and a whole system for making sure they stay in the fridge long enough before I cook them. Kind of like Mom's system for article deadlines. I think it would be okay to sell Henrietta's eggs, since they've been in the fridge, and since Great Uncle Jim used to sell them. But would you please write back and let me know for sure? I'd feel a lot better that way. Sincerely, Sophie. P.S. I'm still waiting for lesson 3 also. P.P.S. What do speckled Sussex do? P.P.P.S. And where could they be? Should I go looking for them? Blackbird Farm, June 29th, 2014. Mariposa Garcia Gonzalez. Heaven's Dance Party. Querida abuela. I made migas for Mom and Dad last night for dinner. Mom was so surprised. Dad said it was the best migas ever, even better than yours. I explained that's just because the eggs were so fresh. I asked Mom why you made migas, since my library book says they're really from Texas, and you never lived in Texas. And Mom told me the story of how you learned to make it from Senora Armandares, who worked at the bank. and how Mom and Tio Fernando used to beg you to make it when they were my age. But it never occurred to me to learn how, she said. She gave me a big hug and said she was so proud of me. Then she even called Tio Fernando and told everyone about my migas, and Tia Catalina and asked me to email her the recipe for their next Sunday meal. And Lupe and Javier wanted to know if I really have chickens. It was kind of embarrassing, but also kind of nice. After dinner, I asked if we could have a family dance party and dance off our migas, even though we aren't at Tio Fernando's and it's just us. So we moved all the furniture around the living room, and Dad sang along to Three Little Birds while Mom and I danced. Dad makes a really funny Bob Marley. Don't tell him I said that, though. Then, Mom picked Sabotage, and we did our hip-hop moves, and Mom covered my ears while they sang the bad words, just like Tia Catalina always did, except she made it like a cool dance move. I picked Kiss, because it's fun to dance to, and because Dad is even a funnier prince. Not because I want to kiss someone. Ew. And then, Dad remembered this really funny song called The Funky Chicken, and taught me and Mom how to do the dance. Sometimes Dad is really old school. At last, we put on Quizás, 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 because it was your favorite. And we all sang along with Cecilia Cruz and did salsa. And even though my dad makes the funniest Cecilia of all, I still cried. But it was the good kind of crying. This morning, I told the chickens that my parents said their eggs were delicious, and that all the rest of my family wants to have some too, and to know all about them. They seemed pretty pleased to hear it. I didn't tell Henrietta that, of course. Well, I didn't tell her I couldn't use hers. But don't worry, I'm not going to try and cook glass eggs. Maybe I'll make migas for Chris sometime, if he comes over again. I saw him at the library yesterday, and he said fresh eggs are his favorite food, but he's never had migas. He said he makes omelets with tons and tons of cheese. I wish you could have some of my migas too. Te extraño mucho, Sofisita. And next is a recipe, which I will put in case you want to try it. Migas, like Señora Armanda Reyes and my abuelita used to make. Migas means crumbs, so you're supposed to use leftovers when you make it. It's that kind of a recipe. Ingredients. Eggs. About twice as many eggs as you have people who want to eat migas. Give or take a few. Salsa. Maybe a 1/4 cup or whatever you have left over. Not too spicy, unless you like things spicy. Oil. Whatever kind you have that's for cooking. Corn tortillas. About as many as you have people who want to eat migas. Cut up into little pieces. It's okay if they're a little stale. You could even cut up your leftover tortillas after you have tacos or quesadillas and put them in the freezer to save for migas, if you were organized. My abuela used to do this. Other stuff you might have around, like grated cheese or chopped tomatoes or sliced olives or cut up avocado. Instructions. Crack the eggs into a bowl. Pour whatever leftover salsa you have into the eggs and mix it up with a fork. If it isn't as salsa-y as you want this time, don't eat so many chips and salsa next time, and save more for migas. Put oil in your big frying pan. Not so much that it sloshes around or anything, but enough to cover the bottom of the pan, because otherwise things will stick, and that's a really big pain to clean out. Put the pan on the stove and turn on the stove to medium or so. Put the cut up tortillas in the pan. Stir them around with a wooden spoon until they get soft. It's okay if they get kind of crispy, but don't let them burn. Once your tortillas are fried, but not burnt, turn the stove down to low. Wait for a couple of minutes so the pan cools off. Then, pour in your mixed up eggs and salsa and very carefully stir them around until the eggs are cooked. Turn the stove off. If you have any cheese or olives or cut up avocado or anything, you can add it on top now. But you don't need anything else. Get yourself a fork and try a bite. If you feel like it needs a little something, add some salt or pepper. When it tastes good to you, get as many plates as you need and serve up some migas. If you have extra flour tortillas, you could roll your migas up like a breakfast burrito. I did that once at my friend Pilar's house. It was so good. When you put the migas on the table, you can say, buen provecho, just like my abuelita always said.